Hello, we are Group 16. I'm Winnie Tang Yue.
I'm Gigi.
I'm Yanes.
I'm Dee.
Today we will talk about restrictive attributive clause in both English and Chinese. We will take the TDI translation test as an example. This is our agenda. Restrictive attributive clause is a relative clause following a noun phrase. It acts as an attributive component in the main sentence. The noun phrase modified is called antecedent. The clause can only be placed after the antecedent. Relative words get the clause and should be put at the beginning. Since the relative words must serve as components within the attributive clauses, certain components will be missing. In other words, the relative words will have the function of the missing components. Relative words can serve many components within the attributive clause. According to their different roles, relative words can be divided into relative pronouns and relative adverbs. Relative pronouns include who, whose, which, that, and so on. They can act as subjects, objects, attributives, or predicates. Relative adverbs include where, when, why, and so on. They serve as adverbials within the clauses. When it comes to its function, restrictive attributive clause has a restrictive effect on the antecedent. It makes the meaning of the sentence more specific and clear. It cannot be omitted. Let's look at an example. I like the book which I bought last week. The part which I bought last week is the restrictive attributive clause used to modify the book. If omitted, we cannot know which book is referred to. If we analyze the sentence structure, we can find in the attributive clause the object of bought is lost. The relative pronoun which plays the role of objective.
Now let's move on to the second part, comparative studies. We have talked about the restrictive attributive clause in English. So how about in Chinese? How to express the same meaning in Chinese? We found that many restricted attributive clauses are translated into the phrase in Chinese. In this example, the attributive clause is translated into Chinese pre-modifier, the phrase, and the antecedent problem is translated into the head noun 问题. The attributive clause is placed before the antecedent to modify the noun. Similarly, in this sentence, the attributive clause is translated into the phrase and placed before the head noun 象征 as well. And here is more examples which are also connected with the pronoun that. And also for the pronoun whose. This is also applicable to relative adverb, such as in which or where. We can conclude that the method of prepositioning conforms to Chinese grammar and language habits, and most importantly, it is easy to understand. This method is not applicable to translate long attributive clause, and it is not in conformity with the Chinese expressional habit. In this case, the attributive clause is relatively complex. If we directly translate it into the phrase in Chinese, the sentence is clumsy and not natural. So other methods should be adopted, like dividing the main clause into two clauses and repeat the antecedent. To conclude, the prepositioning method is to translate the attributive clause into Chinese pre-modifier, the phrase, and put it prior to the head noun. But it is not applicable to long and complex attributive clause.
In contrast with preposition, there's another method called postposition. One feature of this method is parallel structures with repeat antecedents, and I will elaborate it in 3 examples. Firstly, from the English sentence, we can tell that the antecedent of that attributive clause is continent. And in this clause, for information is connected by 2 and 1 with. In translation, antecedent 大陆 is repeated and the 4 pieces of information is broken into 4 parallel parts. This is another example of repeat antecedent, and this example is similar with the former one, but one thing special is that Information in this clause part becomes an attribute of the second repeated antecedent, and you may have a look at this sentence. But not every attributive clause that translated with repeat antecedent is in parallel structure. The clause here only contains one short descriptive message, so there is no need to break into a parallel structure, but keep its original form. For the Chinese antecedent, we were not sure that 展览厅 and 展览 were referring to the same antecedent, but we looked back to English and found there was only one antecedent of this clause. So now it is confirmed that these two are the same, and it is a repeat of antecedent. The second feature of postposition is using adverbial clause. For the Chinese version here, though no conjunction is used, the cause and effect relationship can still be told by the context. Also, if we add the 使得 to the Chinese sentence, the meaning won't change and it is not redundant. This is because Chinese is topic prominent, and if the logical relationship is strong, it is optional to add conjunctions or not. But this sentence is special for the use of both preposition and postposition. For the underlined blue part, its function differs from other information in the main clause. Other three is to show the effects of the antecedent, but this one is to modify the coverage of the antecedent, so it is in a preposition. There are mainly two methods discussed here, but we didn't elaborate every aspect of them for the length of time. If you are interested, try to find examples for omit antecedent, which we will discuss in our paper.
In the previous part of the presentation, we focused on the restrictive attributive clause in English and its Chinese translation. As a matter of fact, there is only English that has attributive clause, regardless of whether the clause being restrictive or non-restrictive, and there is only attributives but not attributive clauses in Chinese. Therefore, we would like to explore this topic in an opposite way. After looking into the examples of our choice, we found out a pattern, which is that in general, an attributive in Chinese that includes a verb structure is translated into attributive clause or attributive clauses in English. From this example, in the source text, the Chinese attributive 人类发展进程中出现的 for the noun 问题 has a subject verb sentence structure. Therefore, it is translated into a restrictive attributive clause as a problem that arises in the process of human development, it. However, there are exemptions that a verb structure attributive is not translated into attributive clauses in English, and the sentence 节约能源和保护环境的基本国策, even though the attributive phrases 节约能源 and 保护环境 has a 动宾结构 verb-object structure. They are translated into policies of energy conservation and environmental protection instead of policies that save energy and protect the environment, as they both exist as a commonly used proper nouns in English. This is done because of the nominalization in English, meaning that English tends to prefer nouns instead of verbs. More examples with different Chinese attributive structures translated into English attributive clauses will be discussed in the essay.
To conclude our presentation, in general, Chinese uses preposition method and postposition method to convey the same meaning as the restrictive attributive clauses in English. Besides, in our project, we talked about the relationship between the Chinese verb-structured attributives and the English attributive clauses. In order to provide an accurate and idiomatic translation, we need to understand the logic of the sentence firstly and choose proper approach.
That's the end of our presentation. Thank you.